My name's Barry Atherton. I've just completed a portrait of Jimmy REID. The portrait came about, I don't know, some 2.5 years ago when I met Eileen REID. And Eileen REID's Jimmy's daughter. She'd seen my exhibition at the Kelvin Grove Drawing Studies and Academies, and we talked about some of the portraits in that exhibition. And it came round, then to the idea of doing a portrait of Jimmy, because she was saying he was coming up to his 75th birthday. And I immediately, responded to that because, well, Jimmy's such an exciting character. It was an opportunity to do not just a portrait, but to do a history painting. Jimmy REID and the campaign to save Upper Clyde shipbuilders, seemed to be just a great subject for a large-scale history painting.
For some trade unionists, going on strike, it's like the Pavlovian dog, You mention some problem and they immediately say, strike, strike, strike. Now, there's nothing wrong with going on strike. It's a very precious right that workers must enjoy. But the truth of the matter is that if we'd gone on strike, they'd have just put the padlocks on the gates. We'd have been outside, the machinery would have been inside, the ships would have been inside. We are finished. So we couldn't go on strike, because some people were mentioning it. And we had to laugh at just going, what the hell, that's stupid. Then should we have a sit-in? Because there's been sit-in strikes before in Britain and in continental Europe, but it seemed not to respond to the crisis that confronted us. This was a crisis in which possibly 10,000 jobs within the industry, but then shipbuilding is an assembly. There's all sorts of jobs created outside and so on. There's communities dependent on it. So this was a major social crisis for Glasgow and the west of Scotland. So what form of struggle? And then the idea was projected. Why don't we take over the yards and just continue working? The sheer originality of it caught everybody by surprise, including the government of the day and everyone else. And then it required us to, what happens if people get paid off by the liquidator, as he would have to do in honouring his legal remit. So we said, well, they'll come back to their work on Monday. How do we pay them? We'll levy ourselves and we'll ask other workers. And the money poured in.
The painting, it's something like 5 feet by 9 feet, is in pastel on a thick handmade acid-free paper, and it's then mounted on a wooden panel. It's quite an unusual technique, but it's actually a very, very versatile medium to use. And I think that's the main reason I use it. It means I can make changes to things in the painting by laminating in new sheets of paper, and I can change the overall proportions of the rectangle of the picture by adding on the top or the bottom or the sides. So it gives me full compositional freedom to develop the painting in any way that I choose. I can also collage in materials, and in this painting of Jimmy, almost literally throw in pieces of paper which can then be laminated in and then worked upon.
You've got me there as if there's a beam of light shining in me, but there's no beam of light shining in me.
Well,
you've conveyed this. And this, I mean, here's all my pals at the back there, right? And here am I speaking here. Now I'm a spokesman, generally recognised as being the spokesman of the work-in. But I don't understand the difference in the tone of light. Maybe it's dead easy to you.
Well, I think one of the first things I noticed about you, Jimmy, is that you're actually very animated, aren't you? You're doing it there. So you're in this sort of typical gesture, the Jimmy Reid gesture, and you're raising yourself onto your tiptoes, ready to fill your lungs and project your voice to an audience that's sort of off picture.
I've used a visual code, and that visual code is that, say, Marx, who's a very important figure in Jimmy's political development, Karl Marx, the image of Marx is the right way up, while the image of Stalin is upside down. And the code is that if they're the right way up, you know, we like them and favour their views, and if they're upside down, you know, we don't. We like to, you know, sideline them. Adam Smith is sort of on his side because I know Jimmy is ambivalent about Adam Smith's moral philosophy and economic philosophy. There are images on the floor. I'm afraid Tony Blair's a little bit out of favour, and we find that he's upside down, as is Margaret Thatcher. Perhaps, you know, probably more predictably. Burns is obviously the right way up because he's such a national hero, and now, significantly, since Jimmy joined the Scottish National Party, you know, national icons seem to be very relevant.
One of the things that I tried to do is to take, in these cameo portraits, a time from Keir Hardie, you know, through Marx, Hume, Adam Smith, and coming to Robert Burns, which now is actually seems very even more significant since you became a member of the Scottish National Party, which is a recent development.
Well, I mean, I don't think they're synonymous necessarily. I know a lot of Burnsians that are not members of the SNP.
No, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm using Burns, you know, to represent the national. He's a national icon.
Absolutely.
He's the bard, you know.
Yeah.
As is, you know, this model of the Scottish Parliament, which is we have Burns and then a model of the Scottish Parliament. You know, representing this sort of, you know, the Scottish national connection now.
But you know what I love about Burns? You know, he would say, let's say, he attacked what he considered the immorality of the sanctimonious, right after him.
Yeah.
And Burns, the deities that I adore are social peace and plenty. I'd rather be the cause of one than be the death of 20. Now, if that is not the statement of a moral man, then I don't think morality has got any meaning. And because, you know, he does get criticised for being somewhat immoral, but I love. Or he was in a pub in Dumfries, and it was a time when the British aristocracy thought there would be an overflow from the French Revolution, and they were all, you know, training and all the rest of it. And he's in this pub. The pub still stands to this day. He's in the pub and he hears the clamour goes, and so what's all that? What's that? And it's a lane out the pub. They've been in that pub, and you go out and coming down the road were bands and ministers of religion, etc., all saying prayers to God for some naval victory. And Burns went in and he put up in the window, "Ye hypocrites, are these your pranks? To murder men and gie God thanks. Desist for shame, proceed nae further. God won't accept your thanks for murder." He's a beautiful man. Beautiful. So that's what he's been a great inspiration to me. I'm not declaring sentimental. Rabbie was a good lad, no that kind of stuff. Rabbie was a brilliant lad, outstanding intellect. They call him, what do you call him again? The plumman that hadn't a vocabulary, more or less. You know, he had 14 words. 14,000 words in his vocabulary. That's the same. That's the same as Milton.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how. I don't know. He went to school for two years. And he could speak French and Latin as well. A genius. Another genius. But his heart was with the people. And this is all about the people.
What becomes important here is the actual position of an image. It's not just the fact that it's in the painting, but for instance, if you put Karl Marx next to Joseph Stalin, there's obviously a whole political debate that goes on between those two images. Coincidentally, Karl Marx is placed next to a statue of a Greek philosopher. I wanted the Greek philosopher in there to represent ancient learning and the long process of development of ideas that are pertinent to Jimmy's own philosophy. But coincidentally, it's that Karl Marx's doctoral thesis was on Aristotle, which I thought was another little layer of meaning between those objects. You know? I've got my own little way of testing the quality of the space, the coherence of the space, and I call this my wee helicopter. This is where you sort of start to sound sort of mildly insane, but pursuing the idea of the wee helicopter, what I do, looking at the painting, is I take my wee helicopter and I try to get it to fly around the pictorial space, you know, round the head and under the arm and behind the chair and around a sheet of paper. And if I feel the helicopter can move in that space without interruption, then the structure of the work is probably sound.
I think my idea from the very beginning, Jimmy, was to include as much as possible to reflect the range of things that you've done in your life. I think of it as a biographical portrait. I mean, we could have started with the portrait and done, you know, a traditional head and shoulders, but it seemed to me that it should represent the things in your life. What I wanted to do was to produce not just a portrait, not just a head, a likeness, but to produce a history painting. I think so. It's a sort of a history painting incorporating and the history of Jimmy Reid, but incorporating a portrait of Jimmy Reid. And I think that was the idea from the very beginning.
Do you think it does that, Jimmy?
I think he's done that magnificently. To tell you the truth, I don't make any sense, even to myself, if you don't see me in the context of the times in which I lived, the ideas I espoused, and I never espoused an idea that was centred on me as an individual. I always saw life and struggle as being getting working men and women. Please understand, I was born in the 30s. Working men and women getting up off their knees, that had been forced into that posture, and demanding change. And that's been my life. And how can I put it? I cherish some aspects of that life, only where we succeeded in doing things which were imperishable for the cause of ordinary people. Do you follow me about that?
Absolutely.
Right?
Well,
and of course, the UCS was a class example.
Yeah.
And you've done that.
Well, the painting's being packaged at this very moment, and it will then be taken down our driveway, which is really quite steep and slightly worrying because the painting is extremely heavy. It'll be loaded onto the van and taken to the People's Palace, and then carried up 3 flights of stairs and hopefully, you know, hung in position in one piece. it's very exciting. This is a 2.5-year project, and this is the point when, you know, I'll see it presented on the wall in the gallery, and later in the day be, with the help of the lighting people at People's Palace, carefully controlling the way that it's displayed and the lighting in the gallery. So seeing it in place in the gallery is obviously the thing that I've been aiming for 2.5 years to see come to fruition. But it's very exciting, but I'm very nervous as well, and I'm certainly nervous of the sort of public reaction. These guys are, you know, they're professional picture movers and hangers. You know, it's very difficult to keep out of the way, but they're the professionals, and just leave them to it. Over here. Just having a look.
Okay, 1, 2, 3.
Acrylic paint, really.
Yeah.
It's just that you're adding the binder to the pigment separately. They're separate.
Hey, I'll be almost in. That's my engagement. Okay, I'm ready to go on a count of 1, 2, and 3.
It's a luxury for me to have other people, like the people from, you know, Glasgow museums, moving the painting. In the past, you know, I've had to. I've put up, you know, scores, hundreds, maybe even thousands of exhibitions in my time. Not just mine, but, you know, most help with other people's exhibitions. And I've been one of the people that's manhandled sculpture into place, or hung sculpture on walls, or even from the ceiling. So to have 4 professionals come along and just take that responsibility out of my hands is such a treat, and I'm enjoying it. I think it is okay. I like it. It feels like traditional height. Is it the same there as it is there? You measured it, yeah.
I think it's higher on one end. Higher on the roof.
In the painting, the eye level is above the figure, or slightly above the figure in the painting. But it's now as though we're looking down. We were looking down on Jimmy. There were things about it that I wasn't absolutely sure about. I'm pleased with the way it looks. It's okay. It's fine. Yeah, leave it.
Yeah.
Mr. Reid, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, may I formally introduce to the Right Honourable the Lord Provost of the City of Glasgow, Councillor Robert Winter.
Welcome to the People's Palace. This is a place where Glasgow shows what's best about itself, but more importantly, it's a place where, as Glaswegians, we can come, remember our common past, and where our children can learn how their lives compare to those of their parents and their grandparents. Many words have been written and spoken about the life of Jimmy Reid and about the contribution he's made to the industrial and political life of Glasgow and the United Kingdom. I'm not going to try to add too many words to that secular litany, but suffice to say that this city believes there to be sufficient certainty about his contribution that he merits a place in the public collection and in the city's common memory. I'm told that the idea came from a conversation between your daughter Eileen and Barry Atherton. It's taken over 2 years to complete as a collaborative project to which you, your family, and your friends contributed. With the assistance of Linda Atherton, Barry Atherton has created a unique and absolutely fascinating portrait, not only of you, Jimmy, but also of your economic and historical circumstances.
I never expected this could ever happen to me. I mean, I've had plenty of photos taken. But even criminals got their photos taken. Leaders get more credit than they're due. Leaders get nowhere if it wasn't for the vigour and determination of those they lead. Some of them arrogant individualists. They think they're doing everything. But if it wasn't for the support of the punters behind them, they are nothing. So bear that thought in mind when you see this painting, because I think the artists have followed our, not our instructions, because we weren't equipped to do it, but our feelings about how the thing should work out. Now I think, Bob, you and I will pull it from other ends.
Yes.
And the thing will be, all will be revealed in a minute.
I think this is one of the paintings that I've enjoyed doing, you know, almost from the very beginning. I've just met so many interesting people, for one thing, and it's had a few sort of technical problems on the way, as paintings always do. It's part of the process of solving problems, and you know, reorganising the composition or all sorts of things. And there have been a few difficulties on the way. But on the whole, it's been a very, very enjoyable painting to do. I think it's mostly because so many people have, you know, come to the house, come to the studio and given advice. There's Jimmy Clockley, Bobby Dickey, there's so many names now. People from the Govan Workspace, they were very helpful. People from the Caledonian University were extremely helpful. When I was working on the image of the QE2 at its launch, which is in the painting, Ian Johnston, who wrote Ships for a Nation, was extremely helpful. Not just in the technicalities of the type of crane that would be in place at that time at the launch of the QE2, but because he teaches in the art school, and we were colleagues when I taught in the art school, he'd come along and give me a good art school tutorial about the visual construction of the painting. All fascinating people, all with, you know, stories to tell, anecdotes. It's just been a very enjoyable experience.
I'd like to
and I should thank.
lovely wife for helping
Well,
me
do you want
to
me?
do the
Yeah, I'd like to thank my lovely wife, Linda, the lovely Linda, for, you know, brewing cups of tea and mopping my brow, and also actually helping me, you know, work on the painting itself. At times, you know, her advice, as it is always, we work together as artists quite often, and her advice and help on the progress of the work was just invaluable. The painting's finished now, and I do, you know, if you ask me, do I like the painting? Yeah, I do, because I think it for me, it represents a long, pleasurable experience, you know, working with Jimmy and all his pals. And there is a satisfaction. There is a satisfaction of sitting in the studio in the evening. I quite often wander through to the studio in the evening, sometimes with a glass of wine, mostly with a glass of wine, and sit down and look at the painting. And it's at the stage now where I can sit down, sip my glass of wine, and actually enjoy it. So I'm at the stage now where I am enjoying the painting. I'm looking forward to seeing it in the People's Palace.
Well, I never expected this could ever happen to me. I mean, I've had plenty of photos taken. But even criminals got their photos taken. But I never thought I would be the centrepiece of what I believe is a very fine work of art. Now, I'm in no position to tell you it's a very fine work of art, because I ain't exactly an art critic. But anyway, it's just that it has captured not only myself, but a lot of my colleagues and various things from my past, which I know were absolutely relevant to the development of what I became, for good or ill. And the other thing I want to say is this, that when I was at school, and I left when I was 14, but when I was at school, insofar as we got any history, it was a history of kings and queens, the Victorian days, and this age, and the next age, and Prince here, and he there, and somebody seduced somebody else, and the whole thing, developed in that vein. Or occasionally we would have a lesser dignitary, a knight, who was a swashbuckling type that could change the course of history with a parry and thrust of the rapier, Errol Flynn type. And that was a history. I mean, okay, I gloss it up a bit, I exaggerate a bit, but that was the essence of the history I was taught in school. I have to tell you, even at 12, 13 and 14, I knew it was a lot of rubbish. And when I was 14 and I had my first pay, I took it home to my mother, Bella McLean Reid. And she was a corps conductor in Glasgow once, and there was a song, fair please I come hear them say, she's Bella McLean for Petticoat Lane, the corps conductoress. And she would sing that to me. That's why I've got such a hate of music, But anyway, the point is that I knew it was kind of garbage. And on this first salary, I gave the pay packet to my mother, dead proud, And she gave me 10 shillings. And she said, now look you, on you, you can't get this every week, James. Family called me James, everybody else calls me Jimmy. You can't get this every week. And I said, oh, that's okay. But I borrowed sixpence from my oldest sister, Isa, and I walked into the centre of Glasgow and I bought Tom Johnson's History of the Working Classes in Scotland. Now, I'm not suggesting to you that that's everyday reading for 13 and 14-year-old boys in my generation. They weren't that weird. And I'm not even sure that I was weird. But in the period in which I lived, aspirations were raised for working people. Confidence emerged during the war. The indignities of the 30s are still remembered. We were saying never again in the 45 election. That's what led to the landslide for Attlee's government. And all of these factors and forces were working. And I was part of that. I was part of that thing. There's another factor operates in my mind. And that's the fact that I have 3 sisters who died before they were 18 months old. And I remember the youngest of them. But they died in a period that I think is called infant mortality. We would go down as infant mortality deaths. And you see, that's a hell of a lot. Wasn't it all that? Hell of a lot. There's quite a number of families. And Glasgow had the highest infant mortality rate in Western Europe at the time. We were also, I would remind you, the second city of the richest empire the world has ever seen. And this is what we were getting in the second city of the empire. I've always remembered these things in my life. And I think the only real purpose of living is to get married and have your own kids and bring them up well, but also contribute in some way to progress, so that when you die, people can say, well, my Christ, you left us a bit better off than we would otherwise have been. Now, that's worth all the bloody titles in the world. I mean, seriously. I've got no objection to anybody doing that. And I've got some pals who some enemies as well, who take the baubles from the state. But nonetheless, I have to say here that that's the greatest honour, the greatest tribute that can be paid to your life. So that was the motive force in my life. And the other factor is that I knew that I was in my teens just after the war, and there was a turbulent self-confidence amongst working people. We would go to the dance, we'd go to the Carnival for a cheap night. I mean, we weren't the weirdos, you know, but we did look for guidance in books which maybe are not so well read now. And we would talk about them and argue with them. And it's my belief that young people have got to be encouraged to believe that they can storm the heavens. It doesn't matter that they can't storm the bloody heavens, but they've got to feel that it's just possible that they can do so. And that is very important. Young people who become demoralised, all these accumulation of factors, they're always talking about poverty in the states, lack of genuine belief that you've got a future, and that in that future you've got a part to play, and in that part, in playing that part, you may be doing a hell of a lot for other people and for your life. Now, we had that. We were getting less money than the apprentices get today, but honestly, we would talk about it in the pubs in Hope Street before we went to the Locarno and things like that. We were talking. We really believed it. And I remember once we went to working, well, I was working as an apprentice in Govan at the time, and we were going to Rossi, where I now stay, and I said, well, I wanted my dog there, Glenn. He said, you can't get Glenn. Why? Well, the women will not have it. So fair enough. So we had to put her into a home. And my mother put her into a home, and she told me what she was paying. It was 2.5 times my weekly wages as an apprentice. So we come back, in Helen Street, we talked about it. Right? Murder policies, was to that effect. So we decided we would get all the apprentices in Helen Street. But in those days, we had indices everywhere. You'd walk across to the glass house, the big, what do you call them again, Thermotang. You're right down onto the Clyde side. Thousands working there, thousands of apprentices. We got them all together and said, yeah, wages are rubbish and all that. Anyway, cut a long story short, we ended up with an apprentice strike, 65,000 apprentices in strike. That even astounded us. There was a lot of apprentices at the time, mind you. And Winston Churchill was the Prime Minister. And to tell you the truth, the tradesmen wouldn't do what the apprentices did when they were at work. So even if they were menial things, the engineering industry ground to a halt. And we won. We won. You've no idea, a bunch of youngsters laying it on the line, doing it, and winning. Some people tell me, trade union struggles, it's great just to struggle. And I'm saying, aye. And what if you get beat? Well, it's still great. I said, no. It's great to take your action when it maximises the possibility of you winning. Because there's nothing that inspires like winning in victories. And maybe organised people have not got that for a long time now. And that might be deficient. The other thing I've got to say is this, that I told you about my contempt for the history taught in school when I was there. Totally missing of the great mass of the people. They were spectators, had no part in anything, which again was nonsense even in those times. But you know, all that changed substantially in the 20th century. The Industrial Revolution started maybe in the 18th century, 19th century, developing momentum, 20th century. But as the Industrial Revolution took place, you had more and more and more workers working together, usually living in the same slum conditions adjacent to their work. They had power. And the 20th century was, if it's going to be written properly, It will be the century in which ordinary working men and women emerge as a force. Now, it's true they had to be organised, because you can have millions of people, but if they're all doing their own thing, had to be organised. That's what happened in the 20th century. And I think that this painting, whatever merits or demerits, and I think it's got merits, but whatever the merits, understand it as an expression of a genuine reality about the 20th century. It was a century where the silent, almost unheard voices in previous centuries of the people was heard significantly and played a part in shaping the destiny of this nation. Now, towards the end of the century, there was some kind of setbacks and all the rest of it. But my fond hope is that in this new century, more or less new, that the forward progress march will take place, will continue, because the voice of the people not only should be heard, but should bloody well be listened to. There is no more important voice than the voice of the people. And it's up to political parties to organise the expression of that voice in such a way as to help change society. So, I'm here today and I've told you what my background is in relation to it. But honestly, I'm not an architect. I wouldn't even claim to be so. Well, you know, first of all, we're talking about, I thought it was one of these Victorian things, you know, the guy looking into the future and solitary. I've never been solitary. I've always been in mess with my fellow punters and so on and so forth. So, whatever reasons, and good reasons they were, we extended, and the artist and his wife were very happy to do that. Because I want to tell you something about leaders. Leaders get more credit than they're due. Leaders get nowhere if it wasn't for the vigour and determination of those they lead. Some of them arrogant individualists. They think they're doing everything. But if it wasn't for the support of the punters behind them, they're nothing. So bear that thought in mind when you see this painting, because I think the artists have followed not our instructions, because we weren't equipped to do it, but our feelings about how the thing should work out. Now I think, Bob, you and I will pull it from other ends. Yes. And the thing will be, all will be revealed in a minute. Oh, where's the map? I think there's a... Oh, here it is. Well, we're ready. We're ready. What do you think here?
Great.
Bobby, Nicky, what do you think here? What do you think here?
It's absolutely brilliant. You've done a wonderful job. Yes, thank you.
Wonderful.
I seem to have been working on this portrait for years. So,
It only seems that way.
oh no, it's actually it's 2.5 years since we began the portrait, and I think it began. It's difficult to remember now. I think it began when I met Eileen, you know, your daughter,
Yeah.
at a party, and we were sipping wine and talking about you, and I think it was, you know, came up that it was we're coming up to your 75th birthday in what was it, the 5th of July, 07. That's this year.
9th of July.
Oh, it's the 9th of July.
Aye.
Ah.
Apart from that,
Oh,
you're,
I'm
you're
close.
correct.
Anyway, the painting will be unveiled on the 5th of July this year. And Eileen said that she'd seen my exhibition at the Kelvin Grove, the exhibition before the renovations at the Kelvin Grove, and we just got talking about, you know, the possibility of doing a portrait of you, and I just love the idea. You know, it was just a terrific, you're a terrific subject, you know, because you know can be very animated and very vital. There's that sort of sense of energy about it, and I find myself doing, you know, gesticulating like this. But it was also, for me, the opportunity to do not just a portrait, not just a conventional sort of head and shoulders portrait, but to do a portrait of Jimmy Reid as part of a history painting, to do a history painting and a portrait. And, you know, from the very beginning, it was such an exciting project, and I've enjoyed absolutely every minute of it, and I've learned a huge amount about working class history, the history of the Labour Party, socialist history of the 20th century. It's just been a terrific experience. I don't know what I mean. How do you feel about the experience now?
Well, you've got to understand that my knowledge of art is quite minimal. I've read books. I've got books out of the library, and I've looked at the various schools of art that's developed. I've never ventured to express a very strong opinion because I'm well aware of my ignorance.
But you're very well read. I mean, that's one thing I noticed throughout this whole project. That we needed to include so many things. It's why David Hume's in the portrait, and I tried to get Emile Zola in as well. I remember we were talking about Zola.
Germinal and Earth.
Yeah. But I'm afraid there's so much in the portrait. You know, it got to the point where, you know, I simply couldn't put any more in. Otherwise, it would have been like a sort of an Aladdin's cave of.
I don't see where it can be improved in terms of explaining through the visual art or visual arts my life. I don't know how it could be improved in terms of subject matter.
Yeah.
And I'm forever grateful.
Yeah, one of the really interesting things that came out of it is how you can use different images. For me, this was a really interesting aspect of the portrait. You can use different images, all those different political figures, and simply by arranging them in different orders, you can actually make a political statement. Or you can create conflicts between, you know, say, the views of Margaret Thatcher and Tony Blair, you know, compare and contrast. You can do that by simply putting them in different. My son tells me that this is called semiotics, that it's actually the position of the objects and their relationship to one another that can give meaning, and that you can actually convey political meaning simply by the position of things. Like, for instance, that Stalin's upside down. You know, it's a clear message that, you know, he's out of favour, shall we say. This comes back, it reminds me of your alienation address, called Alienation, at Glasgow University, when you were inaugurated as, it was an inaugural address to the students of Glasgow University, 1973, I think it was.
Remember
and it, well. Yeah, and it was reproduced in the New York Times in full,
That's right.
which was quite a scoop for
Yes.
them and for you, probably.
Oh, they contacted me.
Yeah.
Michael Cohen says that the editorial board had discussed it and considered it one of the most important addresses
Since Gettysburg. Yeah,
Oh, no,
I remember that.
I felt
Fantastic.
a bit.
Fantastic.
I felt it was way over the top,
Yeah,
but that's
yeah.
another question.
Yeah.
Now, the significant thing was I was the first punter that was ever been elected. You know, but when you got there now, you've got Lord this, Lord that, and then it
Yeah.
comes 73, James Reid Esquire, and that was me.
Yeah.
And so we did the inauguration, and I was so busy, I hadn't prepared my speech the night before, and I was sitting in this office, and there was a very good shorthand typist that was working with me at the time, and I would longhand, give it a longhand, give it a longhand. And this wee guys coming and said, Jimmy, this is ridiculous, you know. All the rest of them, their speeches were in weeks ago. I said, yeah, but I'm busy. And so we got the speech finished, and I couldn't even read it over. But they have, on the eve of the inauguration, they have a debate in the Students' Union, and I can't even remember what the issue was, but I was speaking. You know, you should always do that.
Yeah, I know people that were there.
Yeah. So anyway, and they got a car to take me home to my council house in Clydebank, and I was in there and it's waiting for me, and you've got to put on, you know, the stuff. Anyway, the debate goes on and on and on, and Magnus Magnusson, I think, poor old Magnus had died recently, he's in the chair or thereabouts, and the lassie comes in with this speech that I haven't really seen back from writing it. You're always worried in case you repeat something, you know. So I'm reading it, and I got to the end, and now I've made enough speeches to know this is a good speech. And there wasn't any word out of place, you know, or any repeating of that. So I said, thank you very much, dear. So we did the thing the next morning. Workers are alienated from their employment nowadays. I mean, I think the conveyor belt system is a monstrosity. And so you go on and on in this way. They helped to make the speech, put on this big robe with gold running through it.
We've included it in the portrait.
Of course, blimey, I mean, you felt like a refugee from Macbeth, you know, Shakespeare, Macbeth, you're walking about in this thing, you push it on you and you make your speech. And halfway through, I just knew that I'd written a speech. If I'd spent 4 months on it, I couldn't have bettered it, if you know what I mean. And but you knew. I mean, I'm not saying it's in any braggart sense. I've had enough experience, but you just knew this. And when I finished, something unusual happened. The press gallery stood. I understand that the press table is a custom in Scotland. You never stood for anybody. They stood that day. But I think the important thing is that important experiences in my life were speaking through me. You understand? It's I don't like speakers that are, for example, I've never given a speaker's course. You know, people live how that. Could you have speaker's course? Nope. I think speakers' courses encourage demagogues. If you've studied the subject and you know what you're talking about, if you feel about the subject that you're talking about, you will find the words.
You're a natural orator, I think. It's almost something you were born with.
Maybe communicator's the best.
Oh, communicator, okay.
After working in the shipyards, I went on 30 odd years writing in the press. For at Fleet Street and up here and all over the shop. I went into television because I'd spent a lot of time in television. And I mean, I've got to say, I love television as a medium. It's another means of communication. One of the fundamental aspects of our humanity is our ability to communicate one with t'other. Totally underestimated. The act of talking to one another and listening to what's coming back and talking. That's almost the dialectic of man's humanity's progress. And of course, we do it in writing, we do it in everything else, music and that. Communication.
Yeah, it was a very important part of your career that you made, I think, 3 television documentaries. Jimmy about the Soviet Union was one, and the REID report.
Oh yes,
and in fact, you won 3 BAFTAs for 3 documentaries.
We won 3 BAFTAs for the one documentary.
Oh, right, okay.
We won another one, and then I did this read about the USSR. It was dealing with the inevitable implosion of the Soviet Union. That's why you're quite right to have Stalin upside down in your painting. Now, the time we went there, it was about 1988. The system was easing up because it was crumbling. Its base was crumbling.
And I think you predicted that. I remember you saying that it was pretty clear that somebody like Gorbachev would need somebody like Gorbachev to come along, or something like that.
Well, let me tell you a wee byproduct of this. When I come back, I got a letter from the British High Command, the Army and the Navy and the Air Force, and they were having a conference in London at a hotel in the south of London. You know where that big green in London is, where Wat Tyler moved with the peasants?
Yeah.
What was it?
What tile is in the
I
peasants?
know that. Blackheath.
Right, okay.
Blackheath.
Yeah.
So I travelled down, big military car meets me, takes me to the hotel, it's in there, changed, goes into this place, Woolwich Arsenal, and they've got a dining room in there. You want to see the size of it? A big table that's about bigger than a penalty box in football. I'm talking about width-wise. I'll be down there. So I'm sitting there. I'm surrounded by admirals, everything, generals and that. And I did my national service, leading aircraftsman, plonk, you know what I mean? I'm saying, what am I doing here, kind of thing, right? And then they stopped and we went into the back room and they had this big straw chair and they explained to me that the following day the NATO allies, military men were meeting because they were going into negotiations with the Soviet counterparts. Right, so what they really wanted to know, I've got to tell you, they also said that they learned more from my 3 programmes than they did from their intelligence. Well, after the Iraq War, that's no surprising because there isn't much intelligence. Anyway, so I answered the question. And then they says, the main question they were asking, look, can we trust them? Are they telling the truth? And I told them the truth as I saw it because I was following things. I was there for months and months and months. Gorbachev had got a majority in the Politburo. That was really the rulers of the Soviet Union. They got that. Now that's not a very good guarantee because it was. I think they got one of a majority or 2. So that could have been overturned by another meeting. But I says, but there's another factor. I says the Soviet economy is imploding. It's collapsing. It's not working. And I don't think they've got much chance of meeting the challenge of America and the West in the economic sphere. But with a crippling arms burden, trying to match the Americans, dollar for dollar or dollar for ruble, they've got no chance. So there was a logical imperative that the Soviet Union, if it had any chance of surviving, had to unburden itself of the arms, crippling arms burden. So I explained that to them. They said, we'll go for that. Yes. Now that makes sense. There was one old bugger at the front. You don't mind me calling him a bugger. No. One old bugger, if he was going, oh. And they're all saying, don't listen to him, he's a kind of wildcat. Or words to that effect. That's what happened. And I don't, listen, they were getting in there anyway. But the truth of the matter is, there's another question about, if you're going to work in the media, you've got to be brutally honest with yourself. You make no excuses for what you really deem inexcusable, and you tell the truth. Even if it doesn't tally with some things you might have believed in the past. one of the great tests of your integrity is if you voluntarily admit to being wrong.
Mm.
And I've admitted that too. Don't apologise, but I admit. Mrs. Barber.
Mary Barber.
She's away ahead. I mean, I wasn't born then. You've got to understand this. I know I'm getting on a bit, but I wasn't. But seriously, she'd organised a massive strike of rent strike, and the workers then said they would. And Lloyd George came up and tried to pacify the workers, and he passed an act called the Rents Restrictions Act, which lasted, I think, until the late 50s. Where the private factors couldn't increase rents. That's a long time, isn't it? So that was Mary Barber. Crawford Anderson was an individual, a woman of some considerable oratorical abilities. And her husband, I think, had an engineering factory in Lanark.
Yeah.
And I think she was in the women's...
One reason is that we needed to include some women, because women were very important in this whole thing. You know, you have to say, probably mostly in a supporting role. But there are a few very active, prominent women that... I mean, we're talking about now in the 1930s. These,
oh, no, you're
is
not.
it 1920s?
The rent strike was in the 1418 war.
All right.
Mrs.
Okay.
Barber,
Stand corrected.
Mrs. Barber, how was the other one? Crawford Anderson. Helen Crawford, her name was, and she was very active in the women's movement, both in relation to the suffragettes and against the war, 1418.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's true. So there is I seem to recall seeing a photograph of them with Lenin's widow. Is that correct?
Oh, surprised me.
Krupskaya.
Well, I don't know.
No,
people of the left and intellectuals were going in and out the Soviet Union, you know, George Bernard Shaw, all that kind of stuff at that time. So I dare say they'd gone in that context.
Yeah.
I think Crawford Anderson ended up in the Communist Party. And the other woman, I don't think she was in any party.
When we came to visit you in Rothesay, Linda and I, and you showed us some of your archive, shall we say, and it was mostly, I noticed, stored in cardboard boxes. You know, you took us into one of the rooms in your house, and it was actually full of cardboard boxes, full of all sorts of things. It's actually why I decided to include cardboard boxes in the painting. I mean, as a visual device, it allowed me to then put lots of different things into the cardboard box. You know, like a copy of the New York Times, which is very important. And just looking at the picture of the painting here, there's actually included an image of you and your wife Joan, next to an image of Harry Pollitt, who was the president of the Communist Party of Great Britain.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Who was, I think, a mentor of yours too.
Well,
when you were down in London.
Oh, absolutely. He was a second father to me. He was a marvellous old character, and he was a rank and file leader, and he ended up the secretary of the Communist Party. But he was for the United Front against fascism in the 30s. He was for Britain engaging in the war to destroy the fascists. The Communist International supported that line. And then Stalin signed a pact with Hitler. And then the Comintern suddenly discovered that it was an unjust war. Harry was having none of it. He fought against the Communist International's line. They sent people over from Moscow. He fought it in the Central Committee, and one of them, Arpam, who was the arch-Stalinist in the British Communist Party, he says to Harry, the duty of a communist is to obey. absolutely terrifying. And Harry had to resign the General Secretaryship. And R. Pam Dutt took it over. And then the Soviet Union came into the war, and the Comintern changed its line again, and Harry was brought back. Now that was the defining moment, in my opinion, in which the British Communist Party was finished. If they had supported Harry and defied the Kremlin, well, they might have been expelled from the Comintern, but a few years later they might well have been admitted. But what's the interest anyway? He would have proved his democratic and patriotic credentials, Harry, and big Pam Dutt sold the pass. So I always had a soft spot for Harry, and Harry had a soft spot for me. I loved him very much.
It's actually why we placed the image of Harry Pollitt next to you in one of your cardboard boxes in the painting. As we did with your old friend John McFarlane's there, here in the same cardboard box.
Well, that's
you know, I have to say, you know, next to the image of your dog Bess, I mean, just to bring in a sort of personal.
I love that dog.
Yeah.
I see nothing wrong with equating a good human being with a good dog.
Yeah.
I'm a dog lover.
Well, I didn't love. Yeah. It's just that they happened to be there, actually, because they both died within a week of one another. Actually, didn't they? Quite short, a few weeks ago now, a few months ago. John McFarlane and Bess. You know, so
Well, John,
I think
John was a marvellous old character, an old Isle peer, and
was it he who persuaded you to join the Scottish National Party?
No, I joined up. No, but the point is that John was a remarkable fellow. He was almost like an Renaissance man. He was ILP, he could have been a farmer. He became an expert at fixed odds in football. I mean, you'd hardly... What a career development this is. Him and his wife, Netta, were... as they grew older, they were more stimulated. And John, I'm very happy that you put him in there. I revere him. As you know, I spoke at his funeral. And
Yes, that's right.
Really.
Actually, in the other cardboard box, we've included, Bobby Starrett's book of cartoons. That seems to have been quite important publication at the time. It must have been around 1971.
Well, it was during the UCS. Now, this is a painting decorator in the yards who just flourished and working as a cartoonist and other things. And he a lovely fellow, and he did a great job. But let me tell you here that one of the things that happened during the working was that workers who'd never been given responsibilities in their life before, do that job, do this job, they're given responsibilities, take this on board, right? I remember at the start of the working, it was quite clear that me and a few others, we couldn't do all the meetings, there was hundreds of coming in. So we say to the other shop stewards, you're ready to do your work. Oh, I can't speak. So I drew up a speaker's note, right? And it lasted, to tell you the truth, almost to the end of it. But I would go and speak at a meeting, a rally, and everywhere you went, you get a mass turnout for the UCS. And I remember there was another shop steward with me, a good guy, right? He's speaking before me, and he's reading out my notes, you know, as I was only given headings, and he was going there. And, well, so I spoke after him, and we went after, I said, look, just use that as a guide, etc., etc. Some months later, we were brought together at another meeting. This was a young man, so they say, well, we've got the old and we'll get the young one. And he's got the same notes that I'd written at the start, but he is elaborating. He's introducing his own a form of speech. He's even developing points. And I'm saying, look at the development in this film. Look at the growth in this man. And I was convinced that the most underestimated potential in Scotland wasn't the North Sea oil. but the latent talent of ordinary people that has never found expression because we never gave them responsibilities that tax them. And I think leadership's all about giving people responsibilities, but try and make sure it's not responsibilities are way beyond their capacity at that time to achieve, because that can undermine them. But if men and women were given responsibilities and they give themselves up to fulfill that responsibility, they will develop new skills. There will be depths of talent there that will be revealed. Now, to me, this is what a good society would be all about. And we could see the blossoming of individuals. People that talk about, I believe in the free market economy and the individual. I'm saying you don't believe in the individual, not the millions of individuals that I live amongst. You know, you really do it for your kid. And that's one of the things I saw during the UCS. Finance committee, make sure every penny is accounted for. My God. In any dispute, there'll be piddling such of monies, and it'll suddenly come out scandal, somebody their hand in the till. You've never heard that with the UCS. All handled meticulously. Boys producing documents and magazines and leaflets that had never done it before, and blossoming in the process of doing that kind of work. It was a wee sample in its own way of what a good society can be when it seeks to give people responsibility. And you have no right, by the way, you have no right, the society's got no right to criticise people for being irresponsible if you don't trust them enough to give them responsibilities. And there's just a wee by-product of the working which I thought about often. It was lovely.
Can I ask you, Jimmy, about some of the people that are represented here in the painting, in the backdrop to the painting? Say Jimmy Airlie, who I think was a very important figure at the time. Would you like to say something about Jimmy Airlie?
Oh, Jimmy, during this whole struggle, he emerged out of all recognition, developed out of all recognition. He was a marvellous guy. He worked in sites, tough, rough part of the engineering industry, I can assure you. And Jimmy came from the shipyards and so on and so forth. Then this started. Now, he was totally committed to the struggle. That's point number one. He developed very, very significantly. He was a chairman. He chaired the public meetings and so on, and I would speak and of course the coordinating committee. But him and I were considered a double act. And to some extent, there was a natural blending here. He was sometimes abrupt, but to the point, whereas I would seek to develop a wider argument, and it clicked. It clicked. That's point number one. Point number two, sometimes I wasn't been in an exposed position, because you're right out there in front and so on. And during the whole period of working, I had no fears that anybody was coming up with a stiletto in the back, because Jimmy would have had them. You understand? So he brought qualities which I don't possess. He was quite tough in a disciplinarian sense. You understand? And he ran the meetings with considerable abilities. Because don't forget, these are big meetings. Big meetings, smaller meetings and all the rest of it. No, Jimmy was a tremendous asset. Pity he couldn't sing. He had a terrible voice. Him and Big Davy Cooper, they had a competition who was the worst singer. You remember? We were singing, and Davy got the accolade. You're definitely the worst singer. Jimmy was upset. He's no worse singer than me, you know. And so we used to have good fun as well. Now Jimmy was a very vital part of the coordinating committee, and him and I often had to go on our own sometimes because people were doing other things, but we were always there at the nitty-gritty times. And he never let MD down, didn't let me down. I was the same with him. It was a marvellous experience.
I noticed too that in that famous photograph of the march from George Square, Tony Benn is there in the front row.
Yeah, and absolutely worthy. Right at the very start, when this broke out, Tony was on the train up to Glasgow saying, I support you. Now, it wasn't all Labour MPs that were doing that. Some of them were saying, what's this, you know, is this legal? And Tony was less concerned about legal niceties than about workers standing up and fighting for their rights. So I think it wouldn't be too strong a word to say that we, hard nuts though we are, shipyard workers of Upper Clyde, we had a kind of love for Tony, which has not dissipated to this day.
There are other figures in the background of painting. If I could just mention a few names, you know, you could sort of pick out, Hughie Scanlon of the AEU.
Hughie was the president of the AEU, which was a very, very big craft union, shipbuilding and elsewhere. I think he was, at that time, the outstanding trade union official of any big union in Scotland, along with Jack Jones, who was the secretary of the Transport and General Workers Union, who is a remarkable man. Fought in the Spanish Civil War with his pal. His pal gets killed. Jack comes back. His pal had a young family. He marries the wife and brings up these children as his own. And he was doing. He was just a lovely, decent man, highly principled man. So these were the leaders of two key unions. And to tell you the truth, but they come out in support of us. We were halfway there in terms of the Trade Union Congress and the General Council of the Trade Union Congress. They were very important just because of what positions they occupied and the generosity of the support for us.
There's a whole list of names here of people in the painting. William Bugsy McInnes is another one.
One of my, what a lovely, lovely, lovely wee man. The first press conference, Bugsy is there. Now, Bugsy was the convener of what was left of a yard called Lindhouse. And so we tell the press what we're going to do and that. So we go outside and all the press are milling about. We say to them, you go anywhere you want, you ask what you want, nothing to hide here. Man. So one of them, who was from a broadsheet based in London, is looking at Bugsy, and he made a great mistake. He might have thought, maybe Bugsy's a weak link. So he goes over to Bugsy and he says, Mr. McInnes, do you really think this working is practical politics? Bugsy looked at him and says, don't talk to me about practical politics. I'm a Partick Thistle supporter.
Right, okay. Continuing the name, Sammy Barr. Say something about Sammy Barr.
Sammy was a convener in the shipyard, Connell's shipyard. He was a convener there, shop steward, boilermaker shop steward, and so on. Sammy was there from the start, was there at the end. If any elements in the Boilermaker Society were trying to backslide a bit, Sammy would have fought them and did, on one occasion, did fight them. Sammy was part of a committee of 5.
Roddy McKenzie, Jerry Ross, Alex Murray,
Aye.
David Cooper, George Kerr,
Oh, well, wait a minute,
Kerr.
Wait a minute. Start for the...
Pick out even one or two that were most
Yeah, pick out
prominent.
who you would like to say something about. Yeah.
Well, Roddy was put in charge of the fighting fund, and that's it. You know, because everything. He'd have killed Andy. He'd have taken serious action against anybody that had pocketed any money or anything like that. He was in charge of the cash. He came for the veil of leaving, and he had an honourable role there. Jerry Ross was a character.
Jimmy Clockley is another one, isn't he? Even though he is sitting across the room from us.
Clock is his name.
Oh, Clock. Yeah.
Clock is his
Be
name.
careful what you say.
Clock is his name. Emerged through the UCS dispute with capacities that I don't think he even thought he had, and has gone on there since and is leading the great campaign for us, those the victims of asbestos and asbestosis, which is a terrible thing. How do you want me to go?
There's also Bobby Dickey. You want to say something
Well,
about him?
Bobby Dickey was a convener in Clydebank. He was my convener.
Right.
And Bobby's always been what he is today, dead, straight, forward, honest, reliable man. If he gives his word, he does it. You can take it for granted, that will be done. You see, there was all sorts of different characteristics that, but see, when you gel it together, it becomes a formidable collective.
Sure.
I think there. Robert Courtney Smith, the liquidator, my God, he was a blessing to us. Because he insisted that his job was to make life, to save what money they could for the creditors. And if the yards closed, the creditors would get nothing. But if the working kept the yards open, then the creditors would get something. And as he was representing the creditors, he, ipso facto, was quite sympathetic to the working. God knows we would have been in great difficulties if he had had a kind of reactionary liquidator. I think it's a hell of a term, by the way, isn't it, liquidator?
Can you kind of sum up how you think this feels to have your life represented like this, that's going to be on the wall of a museum? You know, how does that feel?
Well, I never anticipated anything like that, to tell you the truth. When it was mooted at first, I had elements of doubt. My elements of doubt is, I thought it was going to be a portrait of me. There was no way I would have been happy with that at all. But to put it in the context here, when you're leading something, and there was a whole number of people involved in it, but when you're leading something, and it's a struggle, and people are involved, I've known people that say, they don't, I did it for them. Or they don't even correct people who say, you did it. Because working class struggles benefit from leadership if it's reasonably good leadership. But working class struggle is nothing without the commitment of the workers. It's the workers that win. The leaders can represent them and so on. Sometimes people forget that, even in the trade union movement. Over the years I've seen officials coming down and the shop stewards and the workforce have done the job, and the employer's more than halfway, he's 90% of the way he's saying, yes, I agree. And then the union official comes down and says, I've managed to get you a very good settlement today, and all the rest of it. I've heard that innumerable occasions. Whereas if they were honest and wanted to help workers, they would have given confidence back to the workers and says, listen lads, you come down, I come down here, but you had done a magnificent, you and your shops, your ja. Hey, very few of them ever said that. And that's a weakness. You must give back to the workers.
Do you feel
the
that's
confidence.
what the portrait then isn't just about you, it's about
Absolutely.
everybody else, and that
Oh, no.
you were really wanting, you didn't want it to be you wanted
No.
it to be a...
No. I'm absolutely happy and delighted that it's taken this form. As I say, my fear was it was a portrait. You know, the Victorian portrait, you better grow up, but you know the kind of thing. And this is what it's all about. All these people there, my pals here, to some extent, over the years, I know this sounds peculiar coming from somebody like myself, but I love these people. No question about that. I loved being entrusted by them to do a job on their behalf. I could not do that job on their behalf if it hadn't been for their constancy. That's. I've not got a leader complex thing at all. And sometimes I think, you know, it's part of the mythology of history that you change the course of history by a successful parry and thrust of the rapier blade. I'll be right. It's a compendium of all sorts of factors, including people's determination that things should be different. No, I'm whatever initial doubts I had, whenever I saw where Barry was going, I says, oh well, I would like to go there too.
I think I saw it as a joint effort, actually.
I saw it as a joint effort, but there'll be no doubt. This was your game. This is your...
Well, I had to translate your ideas into a visual form, I think.
Yeah, that's it, as far as I'm concerned. I'm no art critic.
Yeah.
But no, I all of us had a great confidence in you.
Good.
All I can say is thank you very much.
No, thank you, Jimmy. It's been a wonderful project. I've enjoyed it from the very beginning.